Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Thursday, October 31st. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. If he's re-elected, former President Donald Trump has promised to enact the largest mass deportation effort in American history.
Deportations are going to be disruptive for everyone. Really, I don't believe anybody wins.
Hear how that could affect the Central Valley's agricultural industry in just a few minutes. But first, today's headlines. Governor Gavin Newsom issued an executive order on Wednesday aimed at lowering California's increasingly high electricity costs. Cap Radio's Laura Fitzgerald has more.
Newsom's order outlines a to-do list for state energy officials and requires them to report back findings at the start of next year. It directs the state's Public Utilities Commission to suspend existing energy programs that aren't performing well or cost more than the benefit to consumers. It also orders the commission and the state's Air Resources Board to find ways to maximize the California climate credit for consumers. In addition, it tasks energy officials with ensuring they invest in cost-effective measures to prevent wildfires. California's electricity costs are among the highest in the nation. Increased need for wildfire mitigation has contributed to the cost. This comes weeks after Newsom signed contentious legislation aimed at lowering gas prices in the state. In Sacramento, I'm Laura Fitzgerald.
The legal saga to bring back flows on the Kern River is getting twistier and twistier. As KVPR's Joshua Yeager reports, California's top cop is the latest to wade into the case.
California Attorney General Rob Bonta submitted what's known as an amicus brief in the case involving the Kern River. Bonta says the city of Bakersfield should do more to keep water flowing through the river year-round. An attorney for the city says both the AG and local advocates are misguided. Most of the water coming down the river is controlled by irrigation districts with senior water rights. Those districts are not named as defendants in the case, so the city argues any ruling favoring the river is likely to have little effect. The filing goes on to say the city has long fought for 50,000 acre-feet of free-flowing water per year, a request the state has so far not granted. A conference in the case is scheduled for November 15th. For KVPR News, I'm Joshua Yeager in Bakersfield.
As bird flu continues to spread to cows and humans in California, fewer than 50 people have been tested for the virus. Right now, there are 16 confirmed human cases of bird flu. That number has held mostly steady for weeks. Most of the human cases are in the Central Valley. Meanwhile, Cal Matters reports that advocates worry there are not enough protections for workers. Employers must self-report any cases, but the United Farm Workers Labor Union suspects some workers are avoiding testing altogether. Federal prosecutors have arrested several suspects believed to be responsible for a string of bank robberies across the state. That includes 3 banks in Fresno and Clovis. The suspects allegedly broke into the banks from adjoining businesses, often while disguised as construction workers. Authorities say many of them have prior convictions in California, but also in Venezuela and Chile. Prosecutors discovered the men after linking stolen cars used in the alleged robberies to Airbnbs the suspects had stayed in.
Tired of spending time and money on vehicle maintenance and repairs? Make this October Car-tober when you donate a car, truck, RV, or boat to KVPR. Spare yourself the headache of never-ending repair bills or the hassles of selling a car yourself. Your vehicle donation is tax-deductible, and it supports our Valley Newsroom and all your favorite public radio shows. Visit kvpr.org/cars to get started.
And now to our main story. If former President Donald Trump is reelected, he's promised to deport millions of immigrants who are in the country illegally. But here's the thing. A huge portion live in California, and many work in the state's biggest industries. As KVPR's Esther Quintanilla reports, experts warn that mass deportations could have drastic effects in the San Joaquin Valley.
Lourdes Cardenas lives in the unincorporated community of Calwa in South Fresno. As she opens her front gate, her dogs let out a symphony of barks. Cardenas calls the Doberman Weenie pups her guardians. even the littlest one, Chiquita. Cardenas migrated to the U.S. in 2003 from the Mexican state of Sinaloa. Ever since, she's worked in the fields, picking fruits and vegetables. Most recently, tomatoes. And she loves it.
The open air, it feels like I'm back in Mexico. I feel free working in the fields, like the birds.
Cardenas is also undocumented. She came here for a better life, but hasn't had a path to legal citizenship. And as the election inches closer, she says she's having more sleepless nights, and her blood pressure has been rising.
This year feels like a repeat of 2016. During that time, me and my companions were living in fear, getting sick and hopeless. That can't happen again.
Cardenas is among thousands of undocumented immigrants in the Valley who have a lot at stake next week. That's because Trump has made promises to enact mass deportations if he gets reelected. Here he is at a recent rally in New York.
On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history. I will rescue every city and town that has been invaded and conquered, and we will put these vicious and bloodthirsty criminals in jail.
By the way, data from the National Institute of Justice show that undocumented immigrants commit violent crimes at a far lower rate than U.S. citizens. An estimated 11 million people in the country are undocumented. Close to 2 million of those live in California. And data show undocumented workers make up nearly half of the state's agricultural workforce. Daniel Hartwig is president of the California Fresh Fruit Association.
We can't just replace 50% of a workforce overnight. That just doesn't work.
Hartwig says the effects on food production could be dire.
And those crops, have certain windows that they need to get harvested in, and can't find enough people to do that. It's a huge problem, right? You're going to have fruit rotting on trees. You're going to have grapes rotting in the vines.
And while Hartwig says budding technology to automate farm labor can potentially help, he argues
we really do need to take care of the folks that are here and that have been working in agriculture. We need to make sure that those folks have a path to citizenship.
Researchers predict deportations could lead to a widespread economic downturn. Ed Flores from UC Merced's Community and Labor Center says it would start with local small businesses and ripple nationwide.
Deportations are going to be disruptive for everyone. Really, I don't believe anybody wins.
Flores also warns these employees can be especially vulnerable to intimidation and violence.
We are most concerned with those workers that are furthest on the margins, industries like agriculture or domestic work that don't have any modern-day worker protections.
Flores says mixed-status families could also be potentially separated. Flores hopes more legal protections emerge to strengthen the safety net for this population. Workers like Cardenas are waiting for reform. Despite hearing the former president talk about deporting her, Cardenas says she's hopeful. She wears a bandana of the American flag around her neck.
Es para nuestra familia y queremos seguir haciendo trabajo honesto y valiente. No importa lo que nos digan, porque no estamos haciéndole daño a nadie. Al contrario, estamos alimentando al país.
She says working in the fields is hard work, but she does it for her family and the country. No matter what happens, she says she and all the farm workers, documented or not, will keep going. For KVPR News, I'm Esther Quintanilla.
And KVPR's Esther Quintanilla joins me now to discuss her story further. Hey, Esther.
What's up, Liz?
So this topic of mass deportations has been garnering a lot of attention this election season, as highlighted in your reporting. Have you seen what the potential monetary repercussions would be to the U.S. and state economy if these millions of undocumented people are deported?
Yeah, I feel like this topic has garnered a ton of interest, like you mentioned, over the last couple of weeks as, the final pushes for the election are coming through. But in researching for this reporting, I found a recent study from the American Immigration Council that found that in a hypothetical scenario where all 11 million immigrants are mass deported in a one-time operation, it would cost $315 billion. And that's not considering any other long-term costs of a sustained deportation operation. So it would be expensive to implement. It would be really costly, especially for long-term costs. It would require funding more ICE officers, training more police officers, working with city governments, jails, et cetera, et cetera. So it would just be a very expensive project for the nation to take on. California is the breadbasket of the country, and the agricultural industry is a $49 billion industry, I believe. So the impact from losing that amount of workers alone would be devastating. And that's not even mentioning other industries where undocumented workers make up a major number of the workforce, that being manufacturing, construction. U.S. Senator Alex Padilla was also asked from reporters, what he thinks about this policy, and he's gone on record to say that it would decimate the nation's economy.
And yeah, people don't realize that a lot of undocumented people pay taxes to the U.S. government. How does that work? And could you just elaborate on how this workforce loss would impact our country further in that way?
Yeah, I think it's a total myth that undocumented people don't pay taxes. According to the California Budget Policy Center, this particular population contributes $8.5 billion to the state each year. And nationally, that number is nearly $97 billion. And more than a third of those tax dollars go toward funding programs like Social Security, Medicare, unemployment, all of which are programs that undocumented workers aren't able to access because of their status.
While former President Donald Trump is pushing for these deportations, has the Democratic Party countered it all with initiatives to work with undocumented individuals?
Yeah, during her interview with 60 Minutes, Kamala Harris was asked really tough questions about what her immigration policy would be if she's elected. We know that she's been nicknamed the border czar by Republicans because of her role as vice president taking on the border crisis. And, she's embraced crackdowns on asylum seekers under the Biden administration. And during her interview, she pointed toward a recent decrease in illegal immigration, the plunging number of illegal crossings in the southern border, and her support of a new bipartisan border bill that would have strengthened the border security policy. That particular bill was shot down in Congress after Trump came out against it.
Anything else you'd like to add, Esther?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to go back to, the notion that undocumented people don't pay taxes, they don't contribute to our local economy. I just want to reiterate that, a lot of undocumented people really care about the nation. They really care about the state that they live in. They have a lot of love for this country. In the story, I talk with Lourdes, who's just one of many undocumented workers that I've spoken to reporting on this topic, who really believe that this could be really devastating to their local community. So I think overall, I feel like there's a lot of uneasiness within this community, and who knows what could happen. But I think that they are just really nervous going into this election.
KVPR's Esther Quintanilla, thanks for joining me in the studio today.
Yeah, thanks, Liz.
And that does it for today. Thanks for listening. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian, and I hope you have a safe and fun Halloween. You can find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.